I've played enough games in my time to understand that sometimes you just gotta bite the bullet and make a change. Even if you don't want to do it, even if you're not ready for it, you gotta make that change. Because the longer you put something off like that, the more consequences result from that negligence of your game. And I think the topic I want to talk about today is one of the best examples of this. For anyone who doesn't know, I've been getting back into Dead by Daylight over the past month or two. I did the tier list about how killers really feel. But today's a little bit different. Today, I want to talk about the nurse, and the nurse specifically. Because for anyone who has been playing Dead by Daylight for a long time, you know that the nurse has never really been nerfed. Like, yeah, they'll nerf an add-on or two every once in a while, make some small changes, but there's never really been a big balancing change to the nurse. Nurse has always been the best killer in the game. That specifically isn't a bad thing. But it's a warning sign. It's a warning sign that, hey, maybe we should nerf her. Let me get into the details a little more. So for context, we're talking about the nurse, who is the 4th ever killer to be released in Dead by Daylight. She was released free to the public in August of 2016, roughly about 3/4 of a year into Dead by Daylight's existence. At the time, there wasn't really a whole lot in the game. The perk system wasn't really what it is today. There was no skin shop, orc cells were not a thing, rift passes and grimoires didn't exist. And we didn't even have custom chase themes and all that yet. Bare bones, nothing really new. But even for that time, Nurse was the most unique thing in the game's entire history because of her power. For anyone who doesn't know how Nurse's power works, you have a little dash. It goes when you hold right click and you dash when you let it go. It's a charge up ability of sorts. The longer you hold it, the farther you go. You go through walls, you can go through windows, pallets, breakable doors. You're essentially no-clipping for a little bit of time. During this power, you are very slow-moving, and you just kind of look in the direction of where you want to go, you go there. When you are done doing your little no-clip dash, the nurse has to take a breath because she's tired, aka she looks down. This temporarily removes your vision of the people you are chasing. Now granted, this effect was a lot more extreme in the earlier years of the game. They have toned it down a lot since then, but it is still a factor. Before I talk about why I think we need to just nerf the nurse, I want to go over what exactly makes her broken. Well, I can put this down into 3 categories. Loop invalidation, no reliance on slowdown meta, and limited counterplay. We're going to go through each of these topics one by one and sort of explain what I mean here. First, I want to talk about loop invalidation, which essentially means when a killer's power or design allows them to bypass the core mechanics designed for the survivors to use to fend off a killer mid-chase. A good modern-day example of this is when the Kresu first released on live servers and was very oppressive. She didn't really have any counterplay. She had a long M1 range in her head fly mode. She vaulted faster. She did everything faster. There was little to no counterplay, and she was very oppressive mid-chase. But unlike the nurse, the Kresu was nerfed relatively quickly. She didn't really last that long in the game. She was S tier on launch, and then within a month, she was nerfed into the ground, and now you almost never see a Kresu in any of your games. Now granted, that is a little fluctuated because everybody's playing Jason right now. But even before Jason released, you never really saw her in any games. It's like in 1 month, as the Otstarva video explained, she went from S tier to irrelevant in literally a month. For the second topic, no reliance on slowdown meta. So in Dead by Daylight, there are a wide range of perks. Perks that can do many different things. When you are playing a killer, a lot of killers feel the need that they have to use slowdown generator perks. Perks that cause survivors to not complete generators as fast, or maybe the generator regresses more when you kick it, or maybe the generator passively regresses when they're not actively working on it. There's a lot of generator slowdown perks. Most killer players feel that without these perks, there would be absolutely no way for them to ever get a kill, let alone win a game. So what they'll do is they'll run 4 generator slowdown perks. And depending on the killer, they might even run an add-on that allows them to slow it down even more. A good example of this is the Skull Merchant in the PTB and when she first released to live servers. She was a killer with a mid power, but the power was very effective at doing one thing: keeping survivors off of generators. The reason why is because your drones at the beginning of her launch were very strong, if not dealt with. If you stayed in the area for too long, you were exposed, and you suffered many other effects. When the Skull Merchant walked into the drone zone, she gained undetectable, meaning she could sneak up on you. Also, the drone's radius was very big, so you had to be careful on what you did. You had to hack the drone relatively quickly, or you would severe major consequences. As a matter of fact, she went so far with Gen slowdown meta that there are notorious games recorded on the internet of Skull Merchant making games last 45 minutes to maybe even an hour, which in modern day Dead by Daylight is abysmal. The Skull Merchant 2 was then also nerfed, reworked, and nerfed and reworked and nerfed again, and now she's one of the worst killers in the entire game. Granted, she was already kind of mid when she was released to the public. And finally, limited counterplay. For anyone who doesn't know what that means, it's when there are very few things you can actually do in order to prevent yourself from getting injured or going down mid-chase. The nurse can be very effective at this, with a power that lets you simply go through pallets, windows, doors, walls, etc. The only counterplay really is to try and mind game the nurse to try and make her mess up her dash. Whether it's double backing, changing directions last second, doing weird moves that make the nurse mess up her movement. Things like that. The best example of modern day Dead by Daylight in terms of limited counterplay and sometimes even no counterplay is when the Ghoul first released in April 2nd, 2025. The Ghoul on release was one of the strongest killers in the history of Dead by Daylight. There were even valid arguments for why he was above the nurse, which is something no killer before him had ever even gotten close to other than maybe the Blight. What made Kaneki so broken was that his power allowed him to hook on into a survivor mid-chase, fly instantly to them, bite them, injure them, and he'd gain a power-up. So with his power-up, he could use his power more effectively mid-chase, and he would always ensure a down within seconds, the longest maybe a minute. No less than a minute most of the time though, maybe not even 30 seconds. His movement was like Spider-Man, swinging from wall to wall, object to object, at very fast and terrifying speeds. But once again, Kaneki just like Kresu, just like Skull Merchant, was nerfed. Now, Kaneki didn't get hit as hard as the other two. Kaneki is still one of the most picked killers in Dead by Daylight today. He still has a pretty decent kill rate. He's relatively A tier, he's just not at his prime. But that does lead me to my next point about the nurse. So during that last section, I brought up 3 killers. I brought up the Kresu, the Skull Merchant, and the Ghoul. If you were paying attention, you may have noticed that these 3 killers all have something in common. A few things, in fact. For one, these are all relatively new killers, in the grand scheme of Dead by Daylight. 2, they were all very quickly nerfed and changed upon release. So why is that then? Why is it that killers who have released within the last 3 years have been very strong and oppressive and have gotten nerfed immediately? Some of them literally immediately. While the nurse has been in the game for 10 years, has had the same power, has had no big changes other than some add-on changes, some reworks to how her power interacted with some perks, some quality of life changes, and that's it. There's never really been a true nurse nerf. Well, that, ladies and gentlemen, is because there is a 4th factor about the nurse that changes entirely how we view her as a playable killer in the scheme of Dead by Daylight. What if I told you that the reason why the nurse has never gotten truly nerfed is because she's hard to use. She is a high skill ceiling. If you try to use her at a basic level, you will lose every time, but if you can master how to play the nurse, you will never lose a game. That is what separates the nurse from every other killer who has been on her power level. For example, Kresu, easy to use. Skull Merchant, bad but was still easy to use, being oppressive. Kaneki, very easy to use. All these past killers who have been absolutely broken or oppressive and unfun to go against have been easy to play as. There's not a skill ceiling. It's kind of just run around, click a button, do some things, and you are rewarded for doing basic Dead by Daylight killer gameplay. So that leads to the penultimate question. Why does the nurse need to be nerfed? Oddly enough, the penultimate reason why the nerf needs to happen has almost nothing to do with everything we've discussed up to this point. The nurse needing a nerf is revolved around an entirely different issue in terms of Dead by Daylight. For anyone who is very active within the Dead by Daylight community, watches community streams, developer Q&As, takes part in surveys, reads all the patch notes, you would know that behavior does a lot of their balancing on the killer side based off, is this too powerful on the nurse? This is something behavior has been doing since the nurse has been released in the game. But even to this day, the nurse literally existing the way she is rings bells across behavior as developers, even in the most recent community stream that took place roughly a few days ago at this time. It was revealed that one of the perks getting nerfed, Nowhere to Hide, you kick a gen, survivors around the gen get revealed. They specifically said, this perk is not a problem for most killers, but the reason it is getting nerfed is because they viewed it as too strong on the nurse. Even in January of 2023, they made the change to change her dash attack from a basic M1 attack to a special attack, because nurse dashing and being able to insta-down you from perks like Starstruck, or being able to run around Sloppy Butcher, Sloppy Butcher, Sloppy Butcher, nobody can heal, Franklin's Demise, Dash, make you drop items, Surge, Downs you, all the gens in the area get damaged for like 9% regression. The nurse literally existing changes the entire method that behavior uses for balancing the game. If the nurse wasn't this strong, balancing wouldn't have to be this complicated. They wouldn't have to make all these changes in fear that the nurse would be too powerful with certain perks. So what is the solution? If you nerf the nurse too hard, it becomes literally unplayable for anyone because she's already hard to use. If you keep her the same, behavior will be stuck to making sure maps are survivor-sided all the time, survive with friends are constantly strong, killer perks are getting nerfed just because they're worried it'll be too good on the nurse, other killers don't get a chance to shine, and we're in a massive hostage situation of balance. Behavior has also been very vocal about their fear of Dead by Daylight becoming pay to win. Well, what good is that fear of becoming pay to win when half of your killers already can only be bought with real money? Which, by the way, includes some of the game's strongest killers. The Ghoul is a great example. You have to pay real money to get the Ghoul as a playable killer. And he is a top 3, top 5 killer in the game. The pay-to-win argument also doesn't exist because another top 3 character in the game, the Hillbilly, is also free. But Billy is balanced enough that nobody complains about him. I don't know exactly how they would do it. I don't know how they would even begin to fathom the idea of the nurse getting nerfed. But everything else has been balanced over time. And the nurse never really getting nerfed means that they have to consider the nurse as an existing killer whenever they make a balance change. And in the long run, my opinion is that it's not healthy for their game. So I think regardless of how they do it, regardless of when they do it, and how they even begin to process a nerf for the nurse, if they want to maintain their game's lifespan for a good few years, they need to think about nerfing the nurse. And I think pulling the trigger pretty soon is not a bad idea. Hey, did you enjoy this video? Are you interested in more content? Well, don't forget to click the subscribe button. Click the bell icon for notifications. Don't forget to like and comment on your favorite videos, and more. Thank you all for watching. I hope you all have a beautiful day, and that you can enjoy life wherever you go. With that being said, goodbye.